Hello and welcome to Lost the Plot, the series where we take an in-depth look at books in a series, breaking down the plot, characters and world, and today we are deep diving into Red Rising. Now, quick note, this is a recap for people who have already read the books. If you haven't, go do it. This video will not give you the same depth of experience as reading it for yourself. It's meant as a refresher before continuing with the series. So, Red Rising takes place in a future where humanity has colonised the solar system, but surprise, it's not some utopian sci-fi dream. Instead, society is rigidly divided into a colour-coded caste system, and the lower colours, yeah, they're basically screwed. But first, let me tell you how we got there. So, way back in Earth's history, in a time known as the pre-conquering era, mankind colonised Luna, or the moon, and used it as a port through which they colonised other planets and moons. But over time, the wealthy inhabitants of Luna, known as Iron Golds, realised Earth was a dead weight and rebelled in a horrific war known as the Conquering. Earth's society was obliterated. Golds took control and Selenius al-Lun was crowned as the first sovereign. Together with his BFF Akari al-Ra, who was made the Imperator, they formed the Pax Solaris and thus began the post-conquering era, or PCE. Now our story begins in 736 PCE, which for us Earthlings is around about 3500 AD, and by this time the caste system is fully established, placing Golds firmly at the helm of society. The caste system is split into the high, mid and low colours, and the Golds are at the top of this hierarchy. They are the top dogs. Think of them as a mix between Greek gods and sociopathic CEOs. They are genetically enhanced, fiercely intelligent, brutally trained, and now have been ruling over everyone for centuries. Then there's the Silvers, who are the money people. They handle the finances and the economy. The Whites are the religious caste, serving as priests, judges and spiritual leaders. And then there's the Coppers, who are the bureaucrats, accountants and government workers. The mid-colours start off with the Blues, who are the pilots and navigators of the fleet. They are calm, logical and basically just walking computers. Then there's the Yellows, who are doctors and scientists. Greens are the programmers and tech specialists who are responsible for coding and maintaining the digital systems. There's the Violets, who are artists, entertainers and creators, and the Oranges, who are the mechanics and engineers and basically keep the infrastructure and machines running smoothly. Below them we have the Greys, who are the military and law enforcement, are basically just space cops. And then the low colours start off with the Browns, who are servants and domestic workers, Obsidians that are giant, terrifying warriors bred for battle, and originally they were brainwashed into thinking that Golds were literal gods. We then have Pinks, who are courtesans and pleasure workers and are trained in the art of seduction and social manipulation. And the Reds, the lowest of the low. These are split into two groups. There's the High Reds, who work on the surface, and then there's the Low Reds, who live deep underground mining helium-3, believing that they are making Mars habitable for future generations. Now this is where we find our main dude, Darrow. Darrow is our protagonist. He is a Red born in the mines of Mars, and he is fiery, loyal, and has no idea of the absolute shitstorm that's about to hit him. We then also have Io, who's Darrow's wife, and she dreams of something greater and isn't afraid to sacrifice for it. There's also Dancer Al-Farin, who introduces Darrow to the Sons of Ares, who are a rebel group fighting against the Golds. There's Sevro Al-Barka, who is an absolute gremlin of a human being. He's the son of a rebel and Darrow's most chaotic ally. There's also Julian and Cassius Al-Bellona, who are twins and quickly become friends with Darrow. There's Virginia Al-Augustus, also known as Mustang, who is a Gold with a sharp mind and a moral compass, which is a rarity in this world. We have her twin brother, the Jackal, or Adrius Al-Augustus, who is a total sociopath and definitely not someone you want to turn your back on. There's Roque Al-Fabii, who plays a fairly minor role in this book, but is a friend of Darrow's at the Institute and becomes a bigger player later on in future novels. There's a few other important characters as well to go over, but this is our main cast. Some notable side characters, however, are first up Nero Al Augustus, Arch-Governor of Mars and father to Adrius and Virginia. There's Fitchner Al Barca, who is a proctor at the Institute and also father to several. There's Harmony, Mickey and Matteo, who are all members of the Sons of Ares and assist Darrow in his transformation from red to gold. And then there's Tactus Al Valii Wrath and Pax Al Telemanus, who are also members in the Institute when Darrow was there. Okay, so now that we're all acquainted with the world's history and the main cast of characters, let's dive into the plot. Part 1. Slave. The Reds of Mars are a mining colony, and for generations they have been told that they are doing important work to terraform Mars by mining for helium-3 to get it ready for colonisation by the rest of humanity. Darrow is a hill diver, the best of the best among the Red miners who risk their lives drilling for this helium-3 deep beneath the surface of Mars. The work is brutal, the risks are deadly, and yet he thrives. He's fast, reckless, kind of cowboyish, and willing to push himself to the limit to win the laurel, a prize that would grant his clan extra food and supplies. And he does it. He wins. Or at least he should have. But when the Arch-Governor's men announce the winners, the laurel goes to Gamma, another clan, because the system is rigged. The Reds are kept in line with the illusion of fairness, but it's all a lie. They were never meant to rise. Darrow is furious, but his wife Io isn't surprised. She sees the society for what it is, a machine designed to keep the low colours in chains. So she takes Darrow to a forbidden place, a hidden garden reserved exclusively for use by higher colours, where she encourages him to live for more, to push back against the chains of the society. But as they leave, they're caught by a grey patrol, and their punishment is swift, lashes in front of their people, a public lesson in obedience. Darrow takes his beating, but Io doesn't. She sings a defiant, forbidden song of rebellion, and she knows what will happen, but she does it anyway. And for it, she's sentenced to death by hanging by Nero Al Augustus, the Arch-Governor himself. Her sister is brought forward for Io to whisper her final words into her ear, and then she's executed. Darrow is shattered. He doesn't just grieve, he's furious. Furious at Io for leaving him, for choosing martyrdom over their life together, for not sharing her final moments with him, and at the Arch-Governor and the society for killing his wife. But her death plants a seed, and her dream for him to live for more takes root. In the mines, anyone sentenced to death is not afforded the right of a burial. Instead, their bodies are left hanging as a public sign of the shame they have brought upon themselves. But in one final act of defiance, Darrow pulls down Io's body and buries her in the garden, breaking the rules, and for this, he's sentenced to death. But as we know, this isn't where Darrow's story ends. In fact, it's just where it begins. And surprise, he's not dead. Part 2, Reborn. It turns out Darrow's uncle is actually in league with the rebel group the Sons of Ares, and they faked his death and smuggled him out of the mines. This is where Darrow meets Harmony and Dancer, who's one of the leaders of the Sons of Ares, and who drops the biggest bombshell of his life. Remember how the Reds were told that they were terraforming Mars for future generations? Yeah, well, that's a lie. Mars has been colonised for centuries, and the Reds are nothing more than slaves for the ruling Golds. And Darrow, well, he's about to become their weapon, as he's tasked with infiltrating the highest ranks of society and dismantling it from within. But in order to infiltrate the society, Darrow has to become a Gold and not just look like one. So enter Mickey, a violet carver who specialises in extreme body modifications. The process is agonising. We're talking months of surgery, enhanced muscle growth, bone reconstruction, the whole deal. Darrow nearly dies, but in the end he emerges taller, stronger and faster. Looking the part isn't enough though, he has to think like a Gold too, and this is where Matteo comes in. He's a pink who teaches Darrow how to walk, talk, dance and even wield a razor, which is a deadly Gold weapon. He's also given a new name and a new history. Fast forward to the Institute entrance exam, one of the hardest tests in the society. Darrow crushes it, only missing one question, which does raise a few suspicions, but he earns his place. And on his way to the Institute, he meets a few key players. There's Julian Al Bologna, who is a kind and gentle gold that reminds Darrow of his own brother Kieran, and who he quickly becomes friends with. There's also Julian's charismatic twin brother Cassius, who also becomes a major player and a friend of Darrow's. Then there's several Albarca, a weird, sharp-tongued outcast who also becomes very important later on. After passing the entrance exam, Darrow is thrown into the draft. Think of it a bit like picking teams in gym class, except way more terrifying. Each student is chosen by a proctor to join a house, and Darrow is picked by Lorne Al Arcos, one of the most legendary gold razor masters and the current Rage Knight. He joins House Mars, the House of War, and their proctor is a gold called Fitchner. This is also where he meets a few more of his classmates, including Antonia Al Servus Julii, who is ambitious and ruthless and very dangerous. There's Roque Al Fabii, who's poetic, intelligent and very loyal. And then there's Titus Al Ladros, who is a brute that's keeping his own secrets. But before Darrow can settle in, the Institute throws its first real challenge at him. In the middle of the night, he is stripped naked, beaten by 2 obsidians and thrown into a brutal initiation where the top 50 draftees from each house are paired against the bottom 50 in a fight to the death. Darrow's opponent is none other than Julian, his only friend. Darrow, crying and terrified, kills Julian and earns a house ring for his trouble. The survivors quickly realise this is where the weak are culled to ensure only the strongest drafts progress. But of course there are a few upsets, and Darrow notes a few low drafts entering into the main arena, one of them being several. Cassius is enraged at the death of his brother, but Darrow doesn't tell anyone it was him who killed Julian, and so Cassius and Darrow become friends. Part 3. Gold. The remaining 50 Mars draftees are told by Fitchner they will be given a fortress to defend, and that they are to go to war with the other 11 houses. The game is simple: conquer or be conquered. But Mars quickly falls apart and the house splits into 4 tribes. There's Titus, who is brutal and violent and leads with fear. Antonia, who's always scheming and plays both sides. Cassius and Darrow, who try to lead with honour. And then there's Several, the lone wolf that watches from the shadows. Darrow, still building his reputation, picks up a scythe in battle, and that earns him the nickname Reaper. But the real challenge isn't just surviving, it's uniting a house that's already at war with itself. Things escalate when Titus starts raiding and terrorising other houses. He's brutal, torturing and murdering other draftees. And this is where Darrow begins to plant the seed. It was Titus who killed Julian, and Cassius wants revenge, convinced by Darrow's lies. But while this is happening, Darrow begins to realise there's something off about Titus, and soon discovers that he's also a red, another low colour carved into a gold just like him. Tensions within House Mars' fortress boil over, and they culminate in Darrow being evicted. This is where he meets Mustang of House Minerva, and he manages to convince her and her tribe into invading House Mars and capturing Titus. During the battle though, Darrow falls into a frozen lake, but is rescued by Several, and thus begins their fierce friendship, with Several becoming one of Darrow's most loyal lieutenants. This is also where the first members of Several's faction are introduced, a group of tight-knit low drafts that go on to become known as the Howlers, a vicious wolf-cloaked warband that follow Darrow to hell and back. The battle is won in his favour, and Darrow becomes the head of House Mars, but now he has a choice: expose Titus and risk his own cover, or let Cassius kill him, and he chooses the latter. Cassius executes Titus, believing him to be the monster that killed his brother. Meanwhile, Mustang tells Darrow of a boy known as the Jackal who is wreaking havoc in the south. But Darrow's next strategic step is to team up with House Diana to try conquer House Minerva. Their battle is intense. Darrow defeats Pax Altelemanus in single combat, and the Howlers storm Minerva's castle in a brutal ambush. But here's the thing. Mustang isn't just another gold, she's clever and calculated, and something about her reminds Darrow of Io. So instead of capturing her, he lets her go, and she escapes with her house's standard, meaning House Minerva has not fallen yet. Darrow then survives an assassination attempt by some of Titus's loyalists, but escapes unharmed. However, while this is all happening, one of the Jackal's lieutenants reveals to Cassius that it was in fact Darrow who killed his brother. And so, just when Darrow thinks he's winning, the past comes back to kill him, literally. Devastated, furious, and filled with vengeance, Cassius challenges Darrow to a duel, and it's not even close. Cassius destroys him and takes control of House Mars. Wounded and bleeding out, Darrow is left to die in the dark. Part 4, Reaper. But Darrow has more lives than a cat, so he's rescued and nursed back to health by Mustang, who has been in hiding with her house's standard since the fall of House Minerva. As he recovers, they form an alliance, and together Darrow and Mustang begin recruiting wandering oathbreakers and slaves, not as subordinates but as equals, fostering loyalty through freedom rather than forced obedience. During this time, Darrow uncovers the truth about the Jackal. He is Adrius Al Augustus, the son of the Arch-Governor, the very man responsible for Io's execution. He also learns that the game is rigged, with many of the proctors aiding Adrius to secure his victory. Determined to challenge the balance of power, Darrow sets his sights on capturing Mount Olympus, the proctor's stronghold. His growing army first conquers House Ceres, but its discovered Tactus of House Mars has raped a girl from House Ceres. Darrow is horrified and he publicly lashes Tactus, but also has himself lashed, demonstrating that all are responsible for the crimes of one. The display earns him even greater respect from his followers. And now, with House Ceres under his control, Darrow moves against House Apollo. At this point, Fitchner informs him that yes, many of the proctors do in fact have a personal stake in the Jackal winning the games, and advises him to keep his head down and just focus on surviving. But Darrow, of course, doesn't listen and locks Fitchner up in one of the stronghold's cells. The proctors, now realising the threat he poses, begin actively sabotaging him, freeing his horses, poisoning supplies, and even releasing a genetically enhanced bear to kill him. However, Darrow overcomes each challenge, ultimately defeating Apollo in a swift and brutal assault. He captures the House Apollo proctor and then advances towards House Jupiter, where he encounters Lucian, the garrison leader. However, Darrow quickly reveals Lucian's true identity. He is the Jackal. There's a scuffle and a few events unfold, but the remaining proctors intervene, allowing Adrius to escape, but not before he kills Pax, who by this point has become one of Darrow's closest allies. Enraged, Darrow kills Proctor Apollo in retaliation, and he also at this time learns that Mustang has been kidnapped. So, with Mustang taken hostage, Darrow launches his final assault on Mount Olympus itself. Some proctors are caught off guard, whilst others, like Proctor Jupiter, arrive in full armour. Despite their efforts though, Darrow and his army emerge victorious, capturing Olympus and the remaining proctors. Mustang is also freed and sent after the fleeing Jackal. Fitchner, however, reveals a shocking truth. Mustang is actually Virginia Al Augustus, the Jackal's twin sister. And so, fearing a betrayal, Darrow returns to House Mars, where he swiftly crushes House Jupiter, who are besieging it. Several and Roke reunite with him, and Cassius, furious over Julian's death, swears a blood feud against him. Shortly after, and to Darrow's surprise though, Mustang returns not as an enemy, but with the Jackal bounded and defeated. With this victory, Darrow is named the Arch-Primus of the Institute. He's offered mentorship by Lorne Al Arkos, the greatest swordsman of their age, but instead he chooses to serve as a lancer for the Arch-Governor himself, placing himself closer to the heart of the empire he seeks to destroy. And thus the Reaper rises, no longer just a survivor of the Institute, but a contender for the fate of Mars itself. And that brings us to the end of book 1 in the Red Rising saga. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know if you want an in-depth breakdown of the other books in this series too. If you like content like this and want to see more, then please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one, guys. Bye.